I have finished test driving carb conversions for a little bit, so I'm putting my regular intake manifold and carburetor back on the car, and the throttle cable just is not suitable for continued use. My throttle cables take a terrible battering from being swapped on different carb conversions. The ends get frayed, they get kinked, and so from time to time I have to replace the cable itself, not the sheath. The outer sheath stays the same. The only thing that needs to be replaced is the inner cable. So I went up to Lowe's and bought 14 feet of 1/16 wire rope. I think I'm only going to need about 12 feet or so, but it's only 32 cents a foot, so there's no penalty to getting a couple of extra feet. And let me show you how I install this. This is not the first time that I've replaced this cable. I replace it fairly regularly because it takes such a battering with all the swapping of carb conversions. So you'll notice that my cable is held to the clevis attached to the pedal with a cable stop. This is also why I send an extra cable stop with my carb conversions, is if an owner accidentally cuts the inner cable too short while they're cutting the outer sheath, they can do the same thing that I'm about to do now and run a new cable. The cable is held to the clevis and the yoke with a hitch pin. So you remove the hitch pin and the clevis and pull the yoke off, and now I'm doing this with one hand while looking through the viewer. I'm going to pull the old cable out. This is just 1/16 wire rope that I ran in the past. And there's the end of my throttle cable, which is the reason that I'm replacing it. Because I'm doing this with one hand, it's going to be easier for me to feed the cable backwards from the engine compartment. The sheath makes a real sharp bend under the dashboard, and sometimes you need two hands to navigate the cable to that sharp bend. And so there's my new cable shoved through the sheath. Now I'm going to attach it to the pedal. And there's all the extra cable that I fed through. I'll be cutting off the excess. But here's the yoke and cable stop ready to be reinstalled on the pedal. And as I mentioned, this is the reason that I send an extra cable stop with my carb conversions, is so that way if an owner accidentally cuts the inner cable too short while they're cutting the outer sheath to length, they can do what I'm doing right now. And there's the yoke reinstalled on the pedal. So now I'm ready to pull all the slack out of the cable and cut it to length. Okay, I've got the throttle end and the cable stop on the cable, but before I pull the slack out and tighten the cable stop, I need to make sure that the throttle plates are closed all the way. Otherwise the cable will be set too short and it'll be preventing the throttle plates from closing all the way. Right now the carburetor is in its cold choke settings. The choke plate is closed, the choke connection is all the way up, which means the throttle plates are cracked open slightly for fast idle. So if I was to position this cable end where the throttle mechanism is currently positioned, it would prevent the throttle plates from closing all the way. So I need to manually put the carburetor in its warm choke settings. And to do that, I'm just going to take tension off of the fast idle cam and the fast idle screw, push down on the choke connection, and let go. Now the throttle plates are all the way closed. So I can pull the slack out of the cable, position my throttle end, and tighten the cable stop. Now the cable will not prevent the throttle plates from closing all the way. I'm going to cut off some of this excess cable here. I'll measure it after I cut it, and that'll tell me exactly how too long it was. Position. Not a very nice cut, is it? Okay. A little bit better. Position that through there. And there is my throttle cable replaced. Let me go work the pedal. Let me see it. And that is how you replace the inner cable. I just measured the excess cable that I cut off, and it's 47 inches, almost 4 feet. So it appears that the inner cable is about 10 feet or so. This stuff is only 32 cents a foot. So personally, I would buy too much rather than too little. You know, you're only looking at about $1.20 worth of excess cable here. And I'll put it on the shelf. I'll find a use for it one of these days or something. I'd rather have too much than too little. But that is how you replace the inner throttle cable. I do it quite regularly because mine takes such a battering due to all the carb conversion swapping. And if you're not fiddling with camera equipment, you can have the cable replaced in 5 minutes or less. It's not difficult. That is how you replace the inner throttle cable.